Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Prep Life Podcast. This is your founder and CEO of Glam Girl Bikini, Amy Enger. And today I'm joined by my fabulous co host, Leemarie Hostetter. Hey, Lee, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. I just got some crazy news from you
Oh,
about the podcast. Do you want to share
yeah.
that?
Yes. So we're celebrating our sixth birthday tomorrow. So, yeah, I just feel really blessed that we've been able to do this podcast. And I feel like I pretty much almost every single week put one out, which is hard to do for 6 years. But I just feel like it's important to the audience that I'm consistent. And so I just thank all of the guests that have been on and like previous co-hosts and everything. Like it's just, I think it's been really special. So I appreciate all the listeners. And as a special thank you, if you are able to leave a rating and review, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see Lee Marie's tank top. It's a Glam Girl Bikini black tank with white lettering and logo. And if you leave a rating and review, which is it's not an easy task. So on Apple Podcasts, you basically have to go into the actual podcast, into our podcast, Prep Life Podcast, and then you have to scroll down at the very bottom, and then you hit the stars. So hopefully you'll give us 5-star rating, and then there's like a little like pencil, and you just click that, and that's where you write the review. And so if you take a screenshot and you tag us on Instagram at Prep Life Podcast or at Glam Girl Bikini, of your, rating and review, then we'll just ask for your address. So you can also DM us or whatever, but we'll just send you that as a thank you gift. And happy birthday.
Yay.
So yeah, I just appreciate all the listeners. So with that, we are going to be talking about our Olympia predictions. So we are 2.5 weeks out of the Olympia today. So today's the 24th and October 12th, right? Is the day. So we have compiled basically it's all of the qualification standings are set. So that qualification ended, I believe, on September 15th, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
And so the list is out. There are 54 bikini athletes that are now qualified. And we're going to kind of go through the results of last year. So we're going to go through the top 15 because those are the only people that really place. Everyone else gets 16th if you don't know much about the sport. And we're going to just go through 1 through 15 and kind of give like a little bit of a bio about each competitor and what things are looking like for this year's Olympia and where they're standing, because there's some people on the top 15 from last year that either didn't qualify or are not competing this year. So, and then we have some just other people that didn't place top 15 last year to kind of look for.
Mhm.
So, we'll just get started. And I think we've talked about the fact that our number one reigning champ, Jen Dory, is not competing. She just
Mhm.
decided not to. And
Which
then,
kind of throws the or makes it even more exciting.
yeah, it
Yeah.
really does.
It's anybody's game. No one's coming back to defend their. I mean, there are several that are defending their title, but not as Miss Olympia.
Yeah, not as the reigning champ. Yes. So we have several Miss Olympia bikinis
Mhm.
and some that have been that multiple times. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what everybody does. So last year, our second place person was Maureen Blanquisco, and she's from the Philippines. And she was the 2022 Miss Bikini Olympia. So she is very strong. I feel like she has a lot of potential to reclaim her title for sure.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because these really top competitors, they only do one show a year.
Mhm.
So with her included, as being part of the top five, that automatically qualifies her for next year.
Mhm.
And being a former Miss Bikini Olympia qualifies her.
Mhm.
So she could literally not compete and then come back and compete in the Olympia without being qualified, which we'll get to somebody that's doing that, a former two-time Miss Bikini Olympia, but we'll get to her later. So with Maureen, she is qualified. We know that she got second place last year, and we really haven't seen her this year, so we'll it'll be interesting to see what she does because she usually does the Arnold at least.
Think it's I mean I love that they can just take a whole year off and just go away and focus on
Yeah.
their prep. And I think that's probably really good for their bodies. But then also I just wonder about them, being consistent with and how closely they watch the shows, the current trends, is posing changing? They're not getting feedback from, judges and like if they take breaks. Like I just wonder about I mean, Jen Dory usually does that, and I follow her. And she'll, go into her off season, and she lives in Vegas, and she posts about having her weekly cheat meals and being with her husband and enjoying life, which I love. But then it's like, then you're reining it in, and versus somebody that competes more often, I think there's just like give or take and pros and cons to either way. Someone that just stays on the stage and consistently wins titles, consistently gets judges' feedback, consistently stays visible and out there and sees how she compares to this year's lineup and the new up and comers.
Which segues into our next person. So why don't you take number three? Because third place last year is very present in the industry multiple times a year.
So Ashley Kaltwasser got third place last year. She has been super consistent, not only with competing and winning. I think she's at 49 pro wins right now,
Mhm.
but she's also been pretty consistently top in the Olympia since she won it. So she has three titles, I want to say.
Yeah,
Three.
she has the most titles of anyone.
So I think she's definitely one we've got to watch as a contender just because she consistently is before the Olympia judges and the top judges and is consistently winning shows. Now she's
Yep.
not consistently competing against Maureen Blanquisco or Jennifer Dory or Laura Lee Chapados or any of those top ones, but consistently getting wins and getting feedback has to give her some momentum coming into this show.
Yeah, and I know she said because she usually always gets the feedback that her shoulders need to be more balanced too. 'Cause she has a very athletic build, and she is definitely one that has evolved with the sport because I don't even think her original first Olympia win would even win a pro card during these days. Honestly, it really wouldn't. So she's definitely evolved with her physique and her posing and all that. And I mean, I think that's why she calls herself the cockroach. The only year she took off was 2017. And other than that, she's shows up consistently at the Olympia and at other pro shows. That's a record of any bodybuilder, not just bikini, to have 49 wins. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think she was saying that her shoulders, this is the first year that they haven't given her that feedback that they need to get bigger.
Wow.
So I think she's finally like to that point where everything's like kind of matching and all that. So it'll be
That's
interesting.
looking really good. I actually am a huge fan of hers, and I got to meet her at the NPC Women's Workshop. And I stood next to her and took a photo, and it just always blows my mind how big these competitors look on stage and how tiny they are when you stand next to them. You're like,
She's so
these
tiny.
women are jacked. And then you stand next to them and you're like, you are tiny. I could break you in half, but really, no. But yeah, it was really cool. So
Yes, she's very petite.
yes.
Yeah, so last year we had a fourth place winner was Laura Lee Chapados, and she is from Canada. She is another just like very consistent person. So she's won the Miss Bikini International title 3 years in a row. So she's our current Miss International title holder, and repeat champion in that. So I think there's a variable with the Arnold that plays into effect with that the other competitors. So I know a lot of people have said it's really difficult, like right after the Olympia, especially when it had been shifting dates. Like one year it was in, consistently it used to be always in September, but since COVID, it's been like December, November, and it's been shifting around. And so, with it being that close to like Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, all those people have to stay on their diet and they basically don't get a whole lot of time in a reverse. they basically are just prepping from the Olympia to the Arnold because the Arnold is like the 1st of March and you kind of have to be there. So I think it's hard to be fresh for both of those like big shows because the Olympia is like our Super Bowl, but the Arnold is pretty much the second biggest. And so anyway, with that being said, her best placement was in 2018. It was her debut at the Olympia, and she was has always been nicknamed the dark horse because she showed up and got second place, and everybody was like, "Who are you? Where did you come from?" And I think her biggest challenge has always been like the balance of her like gorgeous glutes and her tall frame. She's probably hands down, in my opinion, like the best poser in terms of just making it such a performance and something to watch,
Mhm.
as we saw at the Arnold, which I think was her best. She's very captivating. So she is definitely one of my favorites going into this show. And she's been really quiet. So she stopped kind of doing her podcast, like taking a break with her and Phoebe. And she must be very, very focused on the Olympia, you know, because
She's
that's something she was consistent with, I felt like.
Yeah, she's been very consistent on YouTube, which I love. I love
Uh-huh.
watching her blogs. I do think it might be a little telling that she's gone just under the surface a little bit. What I was wondering about her was her routine, both at the Arnold and the Olympia. I wondered if it would spark a little bit of a trend and if we'll see a little bit more of a dramatic flair with.
And dancer kind of thing. Yeah.
And she talked about taking like ballroom dancing lessons and things and like
Yep.
working those moves into her posing routines. And I just wonder sometimes some one of the top does it and then everybody does it. And I just wonder if that is going to be a trend that we'll start seeing. With that, it's absolutely beautiful. I think she's very exotic looking and she's
Yes.
almost over the top. I think she's talked about getting judges' feedback a little bit more about bringing it down, bringing certain body parts down than I've heard her talk about. I've never heard her say, well, they said I needed to be bigger here. Usually she says things about toning it down. And I know
Yeah.
because I follow her and I love watching her training blogs. I know how she loves to train hard. So that's probably
It
her
really does.
biggest like difficulty is holding back and bringing it down in
Yeah.
prep. But I mean, I definitely think she is consistently sort of an underdog, but she's such a beautiful, strong competitor, and I would love to see her do well this
I
year.
know. She's just surprising that she hasn't gotten that title for Olympia. She's gotten the Arnold so many times. And I think she talks about, I've heard her talk about on her podcast where the Arnold is very relaxed for her. And it's like very just like she knows what to expect. It's just like her home. She feels so chill. And I think like she probably feels like a weird, different pressure. From what I understand, like with the Olympia versus like the Arnold, she's very relaxed. And I think that that works in her favor. So hopefully she can find that Zen moment for the Olympia so that she can kind of bring it all together and bring home a title. And then we have our fifth place placement was Isa. So she is also a Miss Bikini Olympia from 2019. And she just, she has probably the best front pose in the industry. She has this alien waist. It's so tiny. And her proportions just look so amazing from the front. She hands down wins every time in the front. It's just her back pose is her kind of like variable. I think she's done a good job of really bringing up her glutes, making it a lot harder. I think in her past prep, she did like a lot of harsh cardio and like depleting and things. And I think she's now like learning that she needs a little bit more food and less cardio so that her muscle bellies, like in her glutes and everything, stay nice and tight and hard. But I've seen good things. Like this year, I feel like has been her best back pose. So I'm interested to see how she does on stage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with her, it's a toss up in my head. Like, part of me wants Miss Bikini Olympia to have like an alien type, like, she's just insane. Nobody can look like her. And that person
Yeah.
should be the best in the world, right? But then part of me is just like, that's not even real. Like, but it is. It is
Yeah. Yeah. She's just
beautiful.
genetically her structure. Yeah. Do you want to talk about sixth place from last year?
You. Sixth place is I am a huge fan. Amy Leanne Delgado. She I feel like is coming in with so much momentum. She just won back to back. Was it Pittsburgh and New York?
I
I
believe so.
believe.
Yeah.
Back
Hmm.
to back double wins. They're coming in strong. I feel like she's had a lot of momentum this year. I was just watching one of her vlogs about getting feedback from Tyler and some of the judges and changing some posing and then competing again where they judged. So she is putting in the work. She has one of my favorite physiques. I just think she's very muscular, which I love, but I think she's toned it down. And I know she talked about bringing her quads down a little bit. And I just think she's so beautiful on stage. And I would love to see her just come in and sweep it.
Yeah. I remember watching her in 2020 when she won her pro card. She won the overall at USA's and she was so tiny. Like you wouldn't even recognize her. And she really hadn't trained hard with weights. And like from what her and her coach, Jamie Day Bernard, were having an interview on their podcast, which I also love, the Fit Body Fusion podcast. I forget what it's called now. But anyway, they were kind of chatting back and forth about how she really hadn't like trained with weights intensely until she started bodybuilding. And then when she did, it was like crazy intensity and her body changed so fast. I think Jamie didn't think that she would be able to put on so much muscle so quickly and her body just responded. And I think that's why her quads got like so blown out in the beginning. And like you said, she's really balanced it out and she looks very athletic. She was 1 point away from winning Miss Bikini International this year at the Arnold. So her and Laura Lee were very close, very different body types. She's shorter, more athletic build, whereas Laura Lee's long and like long insertions and so they are definitely different, but they both fit the criteria and it's going to be really interesting to see how they both do. And then seventh place last year, Ariana Brothers was basically, she took a solid 2 years off. I've had her on the podcast. I interviewed her when she won the overall at NPC Nationals, and basically was like self-trained, took 2 years off and, just went at it. And like she was a rising star last year. How quickly, I mean, she's just kind of built for the division genetically. And I know she had breast augmentation and she just recently switched coaches. So I think post surgery, at the Tampa Pro, she didn't like bring her best just because her her muscles and like her physique, I don't think were quite back to what they normally were. So what she did last year is immediately after the Olympia, I believe she did a show the following weekend. And so she got qualified before her surgery. And so she just recently got qualified. And I don't want to be misquoted on which show it was, but I feel like it was like literally like the last weekend before the qualification or maybe the weekend before. But she's made huge changes. She's definitely a lot harder, a lot more full at this point. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was researching her a little bit about the getting breast augmentation and stuff. I remember I don't know if was it this year or last year Ashley Kay had had an eye surgery and taken off a bunch of time and not done the Arnold and stuff like that, and then she still came back and placed in the Olympia. So I definitely think like she has a fighting chance. But then I also love that like people talk a lot about like bikini competitors always getting the breast augmentation, but
Yeah.
Laura Lee Chapados consistently wins and she does not. So it is
Yeah,
not a requirement to do well in
absolutely.
bodybuilding, which I just think is great. But yeah,
Yeah.
good luck to her. I definitely think coming back after a surgery and competing in the biggest bodybuilding show in the world is absolutely commendable.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think it's fair to talk about Dayraja too, because I remember Dayraja was like the top in the world when she did not have implants. She ended up getting them. This past year, she was ninth. so I'm kind of skipping ahead. We all know that she's not competing due to the pregnancy and that she has a baby on the way. So that's super exciting. Eighth place last year was Ashlyn Little, and the last 2 years, there were so many years there that she was just always the bridesmaid, never the bride. She would consistently get second. When it was kind of points, she did well because she still qualified for the Olympia, still placed like top 10 on a consistent basis. But this past year and I believe the year before, you have to win a pro show to get Olympia qualified. They got rid of the points, so it wasn't so hard on the athletes' bodies of constantly chasing those numbers. And she changed coaches last year, so her prep and her qualification from last year was with a different coach than she had previously been with, and I feel like she consistently now steps into pro shows and will take them. I mean, her body is like insane. The difference is. And then did you want to talk about who placed 10th last year?
So Jordan Lee, is she,
Jordan.
what is it?
Jordan. It's kind of a
Jordan,
different
I knew
little,
I wasn't
yeah.
saying that right. Is she qualified? Yes, she is.
Yes. Yeah, she's qualified. She won the Clash just recently,
Oh
in
wow.
August.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was her ninth career win in the bikini division, but she is also a person that consistently places in the top 15, top 10. Like I said, she got 10th place last year. She has a really cool new look to her. I feel like her orange-ish suit is very unique. It's almost like a coral. She's worn that consistently this year and last year, and I just really like it. And I love her like natural curly hair. She has like a very exotic
What I love about her.
beauty.
She has an exotic look.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
her and Phoebe Hagen both have like very similar hair. And Phoebe was 11th last year, and so she's not competing. She's taking some time off. Did you want to talk about 12th place from last year?
So I am not super familiar with. I'm gonna let you keep talking away.
Keep rolling. Okay.
I'm not super familiar with these names.
Yeah, so Vanya also broke history too because she was the first African American Miss Bikini International, and she's a mix of, I think she's Dominican. I don't want to misquote that, but amazing. She won the international UK at the Arnold, and um, she basically, she was very close with Tara Greer, but that victory made her, in the running. She also got 12th last year, so she's definitely she has a very athletic build. I like her structure a lot. I think that um, she's she's going to do very well.
Mhm.
And then 13th place. Do you want me to keep going? Rihanna.
Sure, yeah, keep
So
going.
it's her name is pronounced Rihanna, but it looks like Regina Juana or something like that. But it's Rihanna, like the singer, just spelled a little bit differently. And she won the Orlando Pro in July, and that has qualified her for this year's Olympia. She got 13th last year. And then our 14th place, Ariel Barley, unfortunately did not get qualified this year. So she will not be going to the Olympia. And last year's 15th place was Tamika Carter, and Tamika just earned hers at the Nashville Fit Show in August. Um, she's just very, you know, I believe she's just very, very symmetrical, and she has like a very refined aesthetics. I really like her look a lot. Um, okay, now let's kind of get into those other names that should be noted from the list of 54. It was hard to kind of like narrow these down, but we can't spend the whole time talking about 54 people
Yeah. So, didn't compete last year. Did Angelica not compete last year?
in the Olympia. No,
Okay. So I don't know how to say her last name.
to Shara.
Shara did
Hmm.
not compete, but she was a former Miss Bikini Olympia
Two
twice.
time.
Yes,
Yeah.
twice. So I definitely think her coming back would be, I mean, she's a contender. Anybody I think that has been Miss Olympia and comes back and is qualified, they know the stage, they're comfortable, they've done it before. Like she's absolutely beautiful competitor. Um, Definitely
Yeah,
has a good stage presence, I think, and just like a good vibe, a good energy to
yeah.
her when she's up there. So yeah, I
She's
definitely.
a great ambassador of the sport. She's such a I've talked to her so many times. She takes time to talk to anyone that I've seen her at several shows and um I was there at the Arnold when she was FaceTiming her two children while she was getting her hair and makeup done.
Mhm.
And she placed top 5 at the Arnold as her comeback show. So, and then she also placed top 5 at the Arnold UK, I believe,
Oh,
just shortly after that. So she's had, I mean, her physique has just bounced back after having 2 kids. I don't feel like she's really missed a beat, in terms of that. I think she still really fits the criteria. She has that just like athletic look, kind of like a Jen Dory and a Ashley Kay, where it's just, very symmetrical. She also was a salsa dancer, so we have the Angelica pose that pretty much every bikini competitor uses as their transition into their front pose as they're walking onto the stage. Pretty much everyone does the Angelica,
I don't.
which
I'm
I've
the
called it that.
person that doesn't, but I love it. Beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, she created it. She like invented it. So it's even in my posing handbook as the Angelica because I mean, no one else was doing that until she started doing it. So she definitely started a trend. And then just some other names to be noted is Valeria from Ukraine. She's very tall, just very just like gazelle-like. I just love her proportions from Ukraine. And then Jordan Brannon from the US. She's just really like having a steady climb, I feel like, um, in the pro ranks. And then Luciana just consistently has been to the Olympia several times. She has such a flair and sass on stage. I love watching her pose. Her energy is like no one else. Brittany Schulman is from the US and oh, Luciana is from Brazil, by the way. And then Brittany Schulman is just from the US. She's, you know, really kind of moving up. And I think that her conditioning and presentation are big standouts. Priscilla Rodriguez from Brazil is another strong competitor. Octavia Mazza from Italy. I
Mhm.
think Brittany Gillespie from the US, as long as she can kind of get her glutes really stand out. Probably like my favorite glutes of all time, but she just really has to get that balance because anytime you have a body part that really stands out, she probably has like my favorite glutes of any bikini competitor. So
Uh-huh.
if she can get that balance, I think she'll be good to go. Tara Greer, which we mentioned earlier, she's showing really strong potential for, just with her placings, like at the Arnold. I believe she got third at the Arnold US and then second at the Arnold UK, missing it by one. So lots of different qualified athletes, several from like China, South Korea, and things like that I didn't mention that I feel bad. I don't really know a ton about them. There's just so many shows now, like every weekend, and now that the NPC worldwide, there's so many opportunities for international competitors too that they don't have to go just, solely to the US to get qualified for the Olympia, which is great for them, but um it's kind of a lot to stay on top of. So, yeah, with that, any thoughts before we close out?
No, I'm just really excited to watch this year. I'm excited to watch how it plays out, if we have kind of consistently the same top, and then trends with posing, and if there's any like underdogs that just pop up. I think it's going to be a really exciting show. And I
Yeah.
mean, it's the 60th year. So I think that's awesome that it's so exciting and leading up into it is the anticipation is there because we don't have Jen
Yeah.
competing. So I think it's going to be a really good 60th Miss Olympia.
Yeah, and I mean, there's 4 people that won't be there from the top 15, so, essentially, like, if you think about that, that moves a lot of people up in their placings, and it could be anyone's day, but so
Right?
many former Miss Olympians that might be trying to regain their title and, some new ones like Amy and Laura Lee that maybe first timers for owning that title. So it's really exciting.
So
And I
excited.
almost hesitate to just even say like who I want. I feel like this was maybe a good mixture of just like kind of giving everybody stats and showing them. And then, but if you have some predictions for the top five, put them in the comments on our YouTube channel. We'd love to hear from you. And like I said before, we definitely want to celebrate the 6th anniversary. So we'd like to give out some tank tops. So please make sure either DM us with the screenshot of your review. It just really helps other people find us that are interested in the same topics. And we just do this podcast to, put content out there that, may help other people that are going through the same struggles or just give first timers tips and things like that. So the more ratings and reviews we have, the better reach that we can have. And that's just, we keep this podcast ad free. So it's a good way to just kind of pay it forward. If you are enjoying the content, please leave the rating and review. As a bonus, you get a tank top. So with that being said, if you would like to apply for coaching with Leemarie or I, you can go to glamgirlbikini.com and hit the get started button. Thanks for listening, guys.